Today is Saturday, March the 19th. This is Beverly Copeland. This is the Beverly Copeland Report. I have a lot to talk about. I don't have much time, so I'm just going to get right into it. We are living through a very painful episode in human history. We are living through the fall of the American Empire. The fall of any empire is always a painful thing. And because the American empire is global, the pain is going to be felt worldwide. What is unique about the fall of the American empire is that it is due largely through self-inflicted wounds. Specifically, as his colleagues say, the architect is a man named, of what we are going through, this historical tragedy, is a man named Zbigniew Brzezinski. He is a Polish-born American scholar. His books, from Between Two Ages through his later books like The Grand Chessboard, they read like a blueprint for the fall of empire. In fact, his writings post his book are even more vivid you could characterize them as the fall of empire. We are living through the fall of the old world Anglo-Saxon hegemony and headed to a new world order, a Polish-led Yugoslav, neo-Nazi, I might add, neo-fascist new world order. I don't think that the Anglo-Saxons are going to fall, no, but that is the dynamic that appears to be playing out. That's what appears to be playing out. Again, his colleagues at Columbia University say that he is Polish-born American scholar. Zbigniew Brzezinski is the architect of it. The fall of any empire is always a painful thing. So how did this happen? Well, it happened, as he discusses in his first blueprint, Between Two Ages. For the first time in human history, control of the world was no longer in this new, his neologism for the IT age is the technotronic era, but really it is really the information age. The control of the world historically was in the hands of the landowning classes, the blue bloods, the business interests. But in this era, the IT era, control of the world is in the hands of the political intellectual elites. In this country, that would be people who control the government, largely in Washington, D.C., the president, the Congress, etc., and those intellectuals, those scholars who come up with these ideas, whether it's benign neglect, neocon paradigm, whatever, sovereign debt crisis, whatever. The mechanics are that at these elite, largely northeastern universities and in DC, and also on the West Coast too, but not exclusively by any stretch, these scholars come up with these paradigms, whether it's the neocon paradigm or benign neglect or whatever. They are then codified by the United States Congress, which is to say they are implemented through the legislative process by the Congress, and the president executes, the executive is the president, he executes the policies or he carries them out. And this process has bypassed, to a large extent, the capitalist class, the blue bloods, the powerful churches, etc., etc. For the first time in human history, the traditional sources of power and wealth are not running the show. It has been hijacked by what are known collectively as bush poodles, wherever they may be, Europe, America, wherever, and these reduced to people who are responsible for the governance of their states. The legislative, executive, judiciary, and the intellectuals who come up with these policies. So it's not surprising that, which is totally violates the interests of the military-industrial complex, and the military-industrial complex being the major defense apparatus for Anglo-Saxon Western capitalism. So these scholars came up with this neocon paradigm. It has de facto become the policy of the United States government. I vividly recall at congressional hearings where President Obama's Secretary of State, Robert Gates, and his Secretary of Defense, Robert Gates, and his Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton, at his side, actually ordered the United States Congress to shift resources away from the military-industrial complex and to shift them to the neocon paradigm. That has been disastrous for this economy, our friends and allies around the world. So, and that clearly was inimical to the interests of the capitalist class. To shift the resources away from their major defense apparatus, the military-industrial complex, to outsource it, the defense budget, to places like Iraq or Afghanistan or wherever, has been disastrous for the capitalist class. It has been disastrous for the military-industrial complex, both the military and industrial side. And it has been disastrous for the American people, workers, the shareholders of the workers of defense and defense-related industries, their shareholders, etc. And it has been disastrous for the rest of the world, because what has happened is that this so-called neocon paradigm, fighting this war on terror, has meant that America has been engaged in an aggressive campaign to destroy our friends and allies around the world. ISIL reduces to de facto a conquering army for Poland, in my opinion, and I'm entitled to my opinion. It has led to the migrant crisis. It has led to instability, untold human suffering in the Middle East, the oil-producing region, Persia, etc., Africa, Boko Haram, etc., etc. And it has meant a loss of great jobs, blue-collar, white-collar jobs, for Americans who work in the defense industry. Used to be, for example, I have to hurry up, in Jack Murtha's district, when the military-industrial complex paradigm was very much the defense policy. In Jack Murtha's district, 2 kids could graduate from high school, get a job in a defense or defense-related company, and live the American dream. 2 kids graduate high school, you marry your childhood sweetheart, you get a job, you both get jobs, you get a house in the 2-car garage house in the suburbs, a boat, Disney World vacations, Catholic, parochial schools, private schools, good public schools. The kids finish high school, you could pay to send them to Harvard or Yale. If they didn't want to go, they worked in the same defense companies, related companies, as their parents. They live the American dream. Today, now that the military-industrial complex is being gutted, that those same kids in Jack Murtha's district are living in a shelter. They can't find work. The only way they get help from the government is become addicts or otherwise dysfunctional, because they're not getting any help unless they self-destruct. That is the betrayal of the covenant. And these policies have been the law of the land via the shift from the military-industrial complex paradigm to the neocon paradigm. By the way, it doesn't mean war. Military-industrial complex paradigm did not mean war, and absolutely not. The genius of Ronald Reagan was that he had a very much supporter of the military-industrial complex paradigm, but not for war, no. To replace the old equipment with the new. We had a booming military-industrial complex economy under Reagan took us out of the economic doldrums without war by replacing old tanks, jeeps, cars, trucks, guns, you name it, with new and modern. Because for national security reasons, it used to be, under the military-industrial complex paradigm, for national security reasons, defense products, weapons, systems, etc., were produced exclusively, for the most part, by American defense companies. So it was guaranteed great blue-collar, white-collar jobs for American workers. Not to mention, under the military-industrial complex paradigm, the defense budget was spread throughout all 50 of the 50 states. Every state benefited from it. Not anymore. Now that money is outsourced to places like Iraq for ISIL to be the conquering army for both, to steal oil, which is the most important strategic raw material on earth. You need oil in all phases of production and consumption: heating, lighting, plant and equipment, automotives, you name it. So that's one aspect of it. But I want you to keep in mind that this came about not because of the capitalists. No, the capitalists are hurting because of this. Like their workers, the shareholders, the defense multinationals are being gutted. They're constantly being mergers and acquisitions to consolidate, because just to remain competitive, because of the shift of this literally trillions with the T dollars away from the military-industrial complex paradigm to the neocon paradigm. It has cannibalized the American economy. And who have been the beneficiaries? Not the American workers. No, whether they were working at Ford or Chrysler or General Motors or Boeing or Grumman or whatever, or the suppliers making not just planes and cars and tanks and guns and systems and stuff. No. Patriot missiles, cruise missiles, Tomahawks. No. The beneficiaries have been 185,000 relatively little people, part of that nexus of the political intellectual class, retired government workers, retired CIA, retired military, retired academics, who are all in on the neocon gravy train at the expense of the rest of us, or to run delusional campaigns to become president of the United States. So that's one aspect of it, the fall of the empire, by decimating its ability to defend itself, by decimating the military-industrial complex, one aspect. Another aspect is by overextending itself with this new paradigm, the neocon paradigm, overextending itself, all that money put in, we know ISIL is a creation of the United States government, to create an enemy, to outsource America's blood and treasury, to create an enemy and then fight a war that bypasses the United States, no very marginal economic impact positive on the American economy. Instead, it cannibalizes the economy. Then there is the decimation. I'm not religious at all, but I'm a moral, ethical person nevertheless. I take the psychoanalytic approach. There has been the decimation of religious-based values in society. I'm not a prude. I'm not even religious. But you have to have a code of ethics in order for a society to be cohesive and to function. Even where I am now, the Bronx, I see the sense of community that used to exist in the Bronx when I was growing up has been destroyed. As it's been destroyed. There were just certain boundaries and parameters that had been established, and you just did not cross certain lines. Now anything goes, anything goes. African Americans happen to be among the most religious of Americans, yet, and when I was growing up, all societies has deviancies, has deviance. It's just, it's a byproduct of civilization. But when I was growing up, if you were a freak, you kept that under wraps. You kept it under wraps. Now you can be a freak, anything. Anything goes. It's like Sodom and Gomorrah. There used to be a code of ethics in the Boogie Down Bronx. One example, I'm running out of time. One example. When I was young, on the cover of Life or Look magazine, there was someone in my community, the South Bronx, and they said she was the most violent woman in the prison system. I had to laugh because she was not the monster they portrayed her to be. I knew her parents. She grew up in a loving home. Drugs did destroy that family because there were a lot of kids, and the father was an alcoholic, but there was love in that family. What destroyed that family was dope, but could not have been because she was more of a vigilante. You understand? She was violent, but it was within, I'm not condoning anyone's violence, but it was within parameters. It was more vigilantism, like a freak acting freakish and she killing him, something like that. Now, so I couldn't, there were parameters. What happened to my mother? You understand? If they tried to do that to my mother, someone like this woman who was on the front page of Life or Look, I forget which mag, she would have slit the doctor's throat. If she asked her to do the things that the cops throat, if they asked them to do the things that were done to my mother. There was a code of ethics. And in even the inner city, the Boogie Down Bronx, that has been decimated. There is no sense of community. People will do anything. It's okay to be open and a freak. So these are all symptomatic of the fall of empire. So we have that going on. We have the erosion of religious-based values. We have the overextension militarily. We have policies being created to serve the interests of a ruling clique, the political intellectual elites, at the expense of all of us for delusional campaigns. You give a neocon contractor a contract, he then essentially gives you a kickback. That is, he makes a contribution to your delusional campaign for president or whatever. So we have the breakdown of religious values. We have the political intellectual elites hijacking the governance of the country for the first time in society. And we have these interminable wars that cannibalize the American economy instead of creating wealth, jobs, and opportunity without a war, like Ronald Reagan's military-industrial complex paradigm. Now, we are living through the fall of an empire. It is always a painful thing. America is, in fact, a fallen empire. Don't believe otherwise. So what can we do? What can we do? I can give more examples of why it's a fallen empire, but I'm running out of time. I only have about 10 minutes. That's not much time. So what can America do? America can do what we did the last time the governance of our country was hijacked. And that's what we did to Ronald Reagan. Excuse me, not Ronald Reagan. That's what we did to Richard Nixon. We could Watergate them. Because let me take this opportunity to say, the American people are misguided if they think that if the people who have been responsible for hijacking the governance of this country and using the resources of this country to enrich themselves, whether it's 185,000 retired government neocon contractors or whoever, that's going to stop. It's going to stop with the next president. The election is in November. No matter whether it's a Republican, a Democrat, or independent, unless there's a Watergate, it's going to be business as usual. It's going to be business as usual. Watergate is what put pressure on Nixon to end the Vietnam War, etc., etc. To end the neocon paradigm, redirect resources back to America, and I might add to end the migrant crisis in Europe and all this other chaos, which is only doing one thing, leading to the conquest of the old world order and facilitating a new Polish-led Yugoslav neo-Nazi New World Order. That's all it's doing. It's not helping America. It's not helping Western civilization. Poland is as close to utopia as you can get. Just look at the Google Maps. Go to Google Maps. It's like a Disney World. It's like heaven on earth. And not to mention in school, Polish school children are indoctrinated at an early age, socialized that they are a superior people. The Polish people are superior and they are going to prepare to lead and they're going to lead the world. This can be confirmed online. It is as close to an updated Nazi utopian society as exists. It is as close to a utopian society that has ever existed on earth with your tax dollars. If they could turn Poland into a utopia, they could have turned America into a utopia. But I'm running out of time. Let me move on. I cannot stress enough the importance of a Watergate to shut this apparatus down, because if there's no Watergate, it's immaterial who's the next president. They are going to continue these policies, the neocon wars, the migrant crisis in Europe, the destruction of the American people through drugs and poverty and disease, and it's going to be the business as usual. If we want to put a tourniquet on it, we have to do a Watergate. That's the only thing. And by the way, it is extremely naive for the American people to think that the people who really are the ultimate power in this world, and there are 7 ruling tribes. They are the English, the Irish, the Welsh, the Scotch, the Dutch, the German, the Swede, and the French. All Anglo-Saxons. Those are the ruling tribes. They control the world through a syndicate of institutional investing firms, etc. And they own, all it takes to really control a corporation is to control roughly 1/3 of its stock. And they control it. Yes, they do. Because you think about it, Toyota, you know how huge these multinationals are? Tops Toyota, his wife, his children, his family, his friends, his mistresses own of Toyota. If they own 3%, that's a stretch. That means 97% is owned by someone else. 1/3 is owned by those ruling Anglo-Saxon tribes I mentioned through their syndicate of institutional investing firms and institutional investors. They own the world. And so it is naive for America to think that we can keep this madness up, keep messing up and being destructive, and that because we are so powerful and so rich, no one can touch us. That is folly. I'll tell you why. Anyone who's had Finance 101 knows that the corporate wealth, which is de facto the wealth, they are called multinational firms or supranational firms or transnational firms. You better believe it, they are. They are not wedded to any nation state. It's immaterial to them. If America self-destructs, do you think the capitalists care? That's hysterically funny. After what America has done to the military-industrial complex, do you think the capitalist class cares? Hell no. They are not tied to any nation state. Capitalism is supranational. They are above the nation states. They don't care if America falls, if Germany falls, if Britain falls, if Poland falls, if China falls. They could care less. They are supranational organizations, entities. They could kill us. And the way that the United States of America has betrayed the business interests, Anglo-Saxon Western capitalism, especially the military-industrial complex, you have to be pretty naive, actually stupid, to think that they're concerned about the fall of the American empire. No, they're probably thinking good riddance. It serves them right. What do they expect? The way they tried to knife us in the back. So it is extremely naive to think that America can survive because we're so big and so powerful and so rich. The people who control this world, they could care less if America self-destruct. As a matter of fact, you given what we're taught, how ruthless and the capitalists are, how they bayonet the wounded after they've won the war, they're probably relieved that America is on this path of self-destructive orgy. It's self because of the betrayal of Anglo-Saxon Western capitalism by America, the betrayal of the military-industrial complex, the betrayal of big oil, the betrayal of you name it. So I think it's extremely naive for America to think that the capitalist class has an allegiance to America or to any nation state, to Poland, absolutely not. They're above it all. They're above it all. They're going to make their money one way or the other. And if American empire falls, they're probably saying, well, that's just one less headache. The way they've been so disloyal to Anglo-Saxon Western capitalism. Now, I am a true believer in capitalism. Yes, I am. I guess because my parents had a small business and I worked in it for most of my youth. As a matter of fact, I was a rarity when I was a student at Columbia. I was a rarity. Among the African American students who were going at the time that I did, only 3 got MBAs. Only 3 of us went on to get graduate degrees in capitalism. Me, Vicki Blackwell, and Gail Robinson. Even the ones who majored in economics, they went to law school or medical school, stuff like that. We were a rarity to go get. I'm a true believer in capitalism. Absolutely. I vividly recall, for example, when I would go on job interviews. And I was asked, where did you learn the most about business, entrepreneurship, capitalism? I would say, well, I must be honest with you. I learned the most from my parents in their mom and pop businesses in the poorest congressional district in the United States. Instantaneously, the fancy PhDs, oh, we get it, we of course, PhDs in business, they would get that like that, of course. I would say, yes, I learned most about capitalism. I'm able to separate the fact from the unreality about it from my parents, and they all understood it. And it is my personal tragedy, and it's capitalism's personal tragedy too, that I no longer have my parents to bounce ideas off of, given we are entering, especially my mother, what a phenomenal, and my father too. I no longer have my mother to bounce ideas off of as we approach the greatest economic collapse in the annals of human history. But you better believe the capitalists are going to survive. It's doubtful that America will. I just have to keep it real. I just have to keep it real. and what America should do is to, clean up the gravesite, metaphorically, and Watergate those people, those entities, those forces that have permanently, that is irreversibly destroyed this country. I'm Beverly Copeland. This has been the Beverly Copeland Report.